improvement and enforcement of civil rights for all people. Beginning in January of 2011, several years before I founded JCRI, I started working here as a news reporter and talk show host for WLJS. After 3 years and hundreds of interviews later, I left WLJS on January the 1st, 2014. In 2016, this station, which is licensed to Jacksonville State University, launched an initiative to have former employees and alumni of the university return to the station to host new shows. I am honored to be chosen as a returning host for the year 2017. The first guest of tonight's program will be Calhoun County District Attorney Brian McVeigh. As the Chief Law Enforcement Officer for Calhoun County, he and I will talk about the retirement of Northern District of Alabama U.S. Attorney Joyce Vance and his recent swearing in as Calhoun County's next district attorney. He will also weigh in on the ongoing Chicago assault and kidnapping case involving a mentally disabled man that was streamed live on Facebook. It is 9:02 Central Time and 10:02 p.m. on the East Coast, and this is WLJS. Welcome into the show, everyone. This is 91.9 FM Jacksonville, 102.1 FM Anniston, and 98.1 Gadsden. We want to welcome in our online listeners from here in the United States and around the world. First up tonight on Your World Today, with President Obama just days away from leaving the White House, many of the president's staff members, as well as his appointees from around the country, and even right here at home, are also stepping down from their positions and preparing for new lives of their own. United States Attorney General Loretta Lynch has announced that she is stepping down as head of the Justice Department. And Joyce Vance, U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Alabama, which covers our entire listening area, will also step down this week. At the turn of a presidential election, it is not uncommon for a current president's appointees to step down prior to a new president taking office. This change in criminal justice leadership for our area could mean the start of new initiatives and programs, or the end of some. It could also have an impact on what type of crimes in our federal district are considered a priority for prosecution. Here to help us discuss more of this is our local district attorney for both Calhoun and Cleburne counties, Brian McVeigh. District Attorney McVeigh, it's so good to have you here with us here at WLJS.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely, sir. With this change in leadership, what do you anticipate will happen with the resignation of Joyce Vance?
Well, nobody really knows what will happen with the next U.S. attorney. I can just give you historically what has happened with prior district attorneys or U.S. attorneys. When a president takes office, he appoints a U.S. attorney, and that person then directs certain people to fill the spots, and we have 3 in the state, Northern, Southern, and Middle District, and they take cues from their boss as to what the priorities should be. So the Attorney General for the entire country basically tells the U.S. attorneys priorities in his administration or her administration, and that pervades through. And going back historically, you can have, there was the U.S. attorney took a strong stance on guns, on crack. Joyce Vance has taken a strong stance on heroin and also on civil rights initiatives. So each time a new president takes office, you get a new attorney general, you get new U.S. attorneys, and you get new directions as far as what they will prioritize. And nobody can guess what that will be, but you can always guess it will be something different than what you have seen up until that date.
So what many people may not out there may not realize is that U.S. attorneys' offices locally, whether it be here in the state of Alabama or anywhere else, are given that guidance in many cases from the folks in D.C.
Right. There's a lot of people that don't know what the district attorney does. They certainly don't know what the U.S. attorney does or what the attorney general does. So you have a state attorney general and district attorneys who basically function in prosecuting all the local cases that are brought. But then you have U.S. attorneys and the attorney general of the United States that handle federal cases. They don't have to take every case that comes before them. They can have a case that is, for all intents and purposes, a perfect case and turn it down because their priorities are elsewhere or they don't think it meets some threshold that they have set. So basically the DA in your circuit has to take cases that are brought to him, carry them to a grand jury, take them to a magistrate, work those cases. The U.S. attorney has more of a broad scope in looking at cases, deciding which cases they'll take and which cases they won't take, and basically sets policies. And so sometimes Ms. Vance has been very good to work with us on some projects. Other projects they don't get involved in, and so we deal with them locally.
I can tell you that her office has partnered with both my organization and your office in the past. Back in 2014, the Office of U.S. Attorney Joyce Vance partnered with both JCRI and the District Attorney's Office to launch a drug market intervention program here in the city of Anniston, where there were several people chosen who were on the verge of having a criminal record as far as drug charges were concerned, and we were able to successfully graduate 6 young men from that program who, for 12 months, were able to stay out of trouble, find housing and find employment and fix their lives. And they were able to have their charges set aside and live the rest of their life legally. And I was so grateful to the work of Joyce Vance, and I can tell you, just from a personal standpoint, that I'll miss her dearly. This office of the Northern District of Alabama, I mean, it covers 31 different counties. I mean, Calhoun, Cleburne, Jefferson, Etowah, Talladega. I mean, even as far west as Tuscaloosa. I don't know, people out there may not even realize just how the magnitude of the office of the U.S. Attorney.
Right.
And just how much that they are responsible for. A lot of her initiatives, she's successfully prosecuted a string of color of law cases involving violent police misconduct or hate crimes as well. She was responsible for prosecuting a defendant who tried to hire an undercover FBI agent who he believed was a member of the Ku Klux Klan in order to murder an African-American neighbor. She was also very focused on Alabama's 2011 HB 56 immigration law. I mean, a lot of her work has been very people-centered, very people-oriented. And early this year, she was awarded the Lou Wooster Public Health Hero Award for her fight to battle the heroin epidemic in North Alabama. What does that mean to you as a district attorney when you see the U.S. attorney involved in all these projects and these initiatives and not just prosecuting crimes? Do you think this is something that maybe local district attorneys can get involved with as well?
Well, again, I think the local district attorneys partner with the U.S. attorney anytime that they can. Mm-hmm. Other times they're doing their own job and the U.S. attorney is off doing something else. So when they find something that they agree on, like heroin is dangerous and is an epidemic and needs to be stopped, then they can partner together and make a difference. On other issues, you have different U.S. attorneys that come and go, and the job of the local DA and law enforcement is to find what fields they have common ground on and pursue those. And so pursue that federal partnership where it helps you. And if the feds are not pursuing something that you think has value, then you do that on your own.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think that her office in particular, I think, has set an example for other U.S. attorneys, not only here in the state of Alabama, but I think around the country. And we can only hope that whoever the next U.S. attorney that comes in will can also follow this example. And do you think that as U.S. attorneys switch over and change with the new president coming into office, does the previous U.S. attorney kind of task the next U.S. attorney to say, hey, this is what I would like to see for our district, or this is what we would like to have done? And do you kind of see the next U.S. attorney taking the previous U.S. attorney up on those suggestions?
I really don't see that when you have a change from Democratic to Republican president. You have some historic, like Doug Jones, for instance, was the U.S. attorney, and I think very highly of him. He had a strong civil rights background. She has a strong civil rights background. So sometimes under Democratic presidency, you see that. Under Republican presidency, you tend to see more pro-law enforcement, pro-drug initiative, pro-gang initiative, pro-gun initiative. And so you kind of go back and forth. And that's not to say that civil rights are not a priority, but they seem to wax and wane depending on who sits in that desk. And so I don't think there may be, I mean, we all know each other. It's very probable that Joyce Vance knows who her replacement will be. But the idea that they say, hey, here's some things you might need to work on is probably doesn't happen. But the staff, there are a lot of the staff members that are, and it's the same thing with the state attorney general, that stay on board. And so you have prosecutors that go through multiple leaders, and so the staff in a large part remains the same. So you have some consistency in the people that you call and the people that you talk to. And so some of that remains the same, some of the priorities change, but generally you have a different direction for each U.S. attorney that takes that office.
It is 13 minutes past the hour. You're listening to WLJS FM. When I come back, I want to have the opportunity to talk with District Attorney McVeigh about his recent swearing-in ceremony that the Calhoun County Courthouse is, in fact, was the first time he was actually elected to this office. And I want to get his thoughts on the role that has been paid for him leading into his second term as district attorney. This is Your World Today with Ed Moore III. It is 14 minutes past the hour, and we'll be right back.
Join me for the Rhythm Nation. Join me Thursdays 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. for the crazy, sexy, cool sounds of the 90s R&B. Rhythm Nation station, WLJS 91.9 FM, with the one and only Lisa Lace. Miss Lace if you're nasty. Join me for the Rhythm Nation.
Attention shoppers, Thursday nights at midnight, indulge your inner capitalist spirit as you drown in the fountain at your local abandoned mall with Thursday Night Aesthetic. The only choice for the best in hot new vaporwave music, only on 91.9 FM WLJS.
I'm Willow. And I'm Kaylee. And we're Sunshine and Radio.
Come hang with us Fridays from 3 to 5. We'll be vibing to the grooviest joints from the time of peace and love. On 91.9 WLJS.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the live premiere of Your World Today here on 91.9 FM Jacksonville, 102.1 FM Anniston, Oxford, and 98.1 Gadsden. It is 16 minutes past the hour. I'm sitting here with Calhoun County District Attorney Brian McVeigh, and I wanted to have an opportunity to discuss with him about his investiture ceremony that took place earlier last week, I should say, at the Calhoun County Courthouse. District Attorney McVeigh, this was actually your first time actually being sworn in, being elected as a district attorney. The first time you actually took office as the district attorney, it was due to the untimely passing of your predecessor, District Attorney Joe Hubbard. What kind of guidance do you feel like Joe Hubbard has given you to take on this second term?
Well, it actually, he ran and won and sat in office for 2 months before he handed it over, and then he lived for several months afterwards. So he was alive while I was the district attorney. And the reason we didn't do an investiture back then, 6 years ago, was just out of respect for him. It didn't seem like the right time, and there was a lot going on with his illness and ultimately his passing. But I maintained relationships with people from that office. I maintained relationships with his wife, Charlotte, who's a wonderful member of our community and a city council person in Oxford. And I took a lot of the conversations that we had, both private and public, and took that to heart. And I've tried to live out the example that he gave to me. That turned out that I wasn't run against this time, which was sort of a way of telling me that I was doing what he had wanted me to do, and that things were going in the right direction. So I reached out to Charlotte, asked if she would be willing to pin me during that ceremony, which is just placing a district attorney's pin on my collar, and she says she would, and that sort of led me to believe that it was the right thing to do. So I went ahead this time, and luckily there was a ceremony already with Judge Page, who was from our office, who won a circuit judgeship, and Judge Wright, who had taken over from our recently retired Judge Phillips. And so we all did a ceremony together, and Charlotte pinned me. My family was there. My grandmother was there. She came from Florida to see this. So it was an emotional time, and it was just kind of a way of Joe being right about who he selected as his replacement.
And, I know obviously the audience at home can't see it, but I'm looking at these pictures laid out here on the board, pictures of you and your family, and Charlotte Hubbard giving you a hug after she placed a pin on you. And then there's a picture of you also hugging former Judge Laura Phillips. Now she works with the district attorney's office. She works at your office, and I just see nothing but love in this picture. Nothing but love, hope, peace, and promise. And there was not an empty seat inside of that courtroom. And if for anyone who saw the pictures in the Anniston Star, I mean, you could tell the magnitude of that event and how it was just a huge wave of just proud emotions running through that courtroom.
It meant a lot to me that Charlotte has been as kind as she had been over the years. She could have very well just said, hey, I don't want any part to do with it, or just do your own thing. But she has been sort of a mentor to me and has stuck with me all this time. So it was important for her to be involved. My family has been very strong. That was one of the points that Joe made clear to me, is spend time with your family, make sure your family's a part of this. And my two daughters are here with me tonight. So, and Judge Phillips used to work in the office with Joe. She has chosen to retire as a judge and then come back full-time with my office. So it just seemed like a bunch of old friends sitting around together, and it was I don't know what it seemed like from the crowd, but from where we were standing, it was like Joe was there with us.
And it's interesting to me that the district attorney's widow, Charlotte Hubbard, it makes sense, because the fact that Mrs. Hubbard was able to extend that arm of grace and love to you, I think that in its entirety, in just a simple nutshell, that is the love of Christ. That is the love of God, and you cannot. That is the only place that something like that comes from. Because, as you said, that could have easily been a dismissal, okay, well, and I think that is magnificent. I think that is wonderful, and I think that's something that we as a community should cherish as well. I want to switch gears here for a minute to this case out of Chicago, Illinois. This such a horrific case that has really, I think, not only frustrated us as Americans, but I think for those of us who work in and out of the legal system, it's confusing to us in that we don't know why it happened. These 4 suspects that were charged in connection with the attack on a special needs teen that was streamed live on Facebook. 3 18-year-olds, Jordan Hill, Tessa Faye Cooper, Brittany Covington, and 24-year-old Tanisha Covington were all charged with felony aggravated kidnapping, aggravated unlawful restraint, and aggravated battery with a deadly weapon. And also, they were charged with hate crimes after tying up an 18-year-old special needs teen and torturing him for hours while he was being videotaped doing so. The department said that they sought hate crime charges because of the victim's diminished mental capacity and that the 4 suspects were using these racial epithets that were heard on the video. In the video, you can see that the victim was cowering in a corner of a room. He was tied up with his mouth bound in plastic. One of the assailants slashed his sweatshirt with a knife. There was a young woman who was standing there recording it. She was pointing the camera back at herself. They took a knife to the victim's head, carved a patch in his scalp, and it's awful. What do you think that this case, what precedent do you think that it sets as far as how we view hate crimes in this country?
Well, I think most people don't understand hate crimes, to be honest with you. So you look at it first, take the hate crime out of it. It is a horrible offense that occurred against a special needs person, and they were so callous that they videotaped it and put it out there. I'm assuming because they thought, hey, this is normal. So it makes you wonder how many times this happens that we don't know about or that isn't broadcast out there. And then if race or any other of a long list of factors are the reason that you commit that crime or play a part in your reasoning behind committing that crime, then it becomes a hate crime. But it's a crime at its core. And so I think we as a society should treat each other civilly more than we do. And we should not allow this sort of stuff to happen. We should not allow that it to be normal to be broadcast. And coming up on the inauguration, that's a thought that everybody ought to have, is that everybody ought to calm down. We as a country ought to do nicer things for one another. We shouldn't think it's okay to broadcast humiliating a young man, injuring a young man, that sort of thing. The hate crime aspect of it is secondary, really. We should not treat other people this way, regardless of their color, their race, their ethnicity, anything. They should not be treated this way. And the fact that it's a hate crime and there are racial motivations behind it can be looked at and should be looked at. But at its core, it's a proof that we as a society have gotten sort of calloused to things that we see on the internet. And I think it's getting worse and worse. We've had situations across the country where people are broadcasting rapes and robberies and beatings, and that shouldn't happen.
And you see in these videos, District Attorney McVeigh, it'll dozens of people just standing around in these videos watching this happen.
And if it weren't for the video, we wouldn't know.
We wouldn't know anything.
So
about
I wonder how much it happens, and I wonder how much the videos egg it on and make it worse and make people misbehave worse. And we as a society need to address this quickly before it gets worse than it is.
What I've noticed, too, in this video with these kids in Chicago, and not only with these kids in Chicago, but as far back as 1999, going to Columbine, I noticed that there are adults out there, adults like you and I, who we're responsible for making sure that these kids are raised in the right way. It is our responsibility to make sure that these kids know right from wrong, and that we send them out into the world with the knowledge that you treat each other with dignity, kindness, and respect. And that I feel that there are some people out there who are making excuses for the actions of these kids. I mean, if I can, like I said, going all the way back to 1999 at Columbine High School, a horrific, tragic shooting. I remember there were adults out there making excuses for those kids. Oh, well, they were bullied. They were taunted. You had people out there making excuses for Dylan Roof, the man who shot up the church in South Carolina. You had people making excuses for the people who beat up Robert Champion, who died on the Florida A&M University bus. He was a band student. It was some kind of hazing ritual. They made excuses for 21-year-old Micah Johnson, the man who killed 5 police officers in Dallas on a public street. They made excuses for 19-year-old Ethan Couch, the kid from Texas who killed 4 people because he was driving under the influence of drugs and alcohol. And his attorney decided, oh, he has affluence. He's too rich to know that he was making a bad decision.
Right.
Why?
I think we as a society have started to, and this has changed in my lifetime. When I was a young kid, if you had a serial killer or somebody that did something wrong, you just thought they were a bad person. Mm-hmm. And then as time went by, all of a sudden we thought, well, why is he a bad person? And people started, and you called it making excuses. I think that's the right way to explain it. But people wanted to understand why someone would behave the way that Dylan Roof, for instance, did. Well, maybe he's just a mean, hateful person, mm-hmm. and he deserves the death penalty, and that's it. Mm-hmm. But people won't stop, and they want to know more about what led him to feel this way, what led him to, maybe he's just mean and deserves to be removed from society so the rest of us are safer. So I think we have started to assume that every case there must be something that led that person to commit that crime. And I don't think that assumption has been helpful. We can worry about why somebody did something later, but for the punishment stage of a trial, did they do it? And that's it. Mm-hmm. I don't need to know why. Mm-hmm. And if we're talking about societal things that we can impact, then we need to be looking at those things and teaching about those things. But I don't think that we're gaining any intelligence in our society from the Columbine thing. I think we're just making excuses. Mm-hmm. I don't think we're making things better. Mm-hmm. I think we're just setting up people to say, oh, I've got affluenza down the road. It doesn't matter. There are laws in place. If you violate the laws, then you should be punished, period. Mm.
We're going to end it on that note, District Attorney McVeigh. I thank you so much for being here on this world premiere of our show, Your World Today. I want to impart on everyone out there listening under the sound of my voice, it is our responsibility to make sure that our children are prepared to go out into society and be the respectful, kind, courteous, humanitarian-based adults that we are supposed to teach them to be, and that making excuses for them does not help them to become better people. And I think that it is, no matter who you are or where you come from, that is a responsibility that we all bear. District Attorney McVeigh, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
You all, it has been such a pleasure. Thank you for joining us on this world premiere. This is 91.9 FM Jacksonville, 102.1 FM Anniston, Oxford, and 98.1 Gadsden. This is WLJS. Have a great night. We'll see you next Monday at 9 o'clock.